Hi there. So we are going to get .NET Core running under Linux in this video. So we'll go over a few different concepts, and we'll start out by looking at a few slides here. First of all, just as a reminder, .NET Core is really the future of .NET. It's a performant, smaller framework. They've gotten rid of a lot of the things that are in the .NET framework that support more legacy stuff. It is open source, and the important part that we're going to point out in this video is cross-platform. You saw in a previous video how we put .NET Core, took the project over, moved it onto a Mac, and ran it just fine. We're going to do something similar with Linux. The difference with Linux is that we don't have Visual Studio for Linux, where we do with the Mac. So we're going to go through the different pieces of this and how we do it. So basically, what we're going to be doing is running this on Ubuntu 16.04, the 64-bit version, but there's other distributions of Linux that are supported, not just Ubuntu. We're going to install .NET Core on Ubuntu. We're going to install Postman on Ubuntu so that we can make sure that that works properly. And then we're going to publish for Ubuntu on Windows. So we're going to go into our Windows version of Visual Studio and actually, not Visual Studio, sorry. We're going to use the .NET command line to actually publish the files. Then we're going to move those over to Ubuntu, and we're going to launch the application on Linux and test it in Postman. And just as a reminder of what we have here, on our back end, we could certainly deploy this .NET Core application to Azure and just have clients on the different operating systems. But the point of this video is to show that you can actually have the .NET Core Web API, web servers, the RESTful web services running on these different platforms. So we're just using Azure right now for a Microsoft SQL Server backend database in the cloud. We have already shown you how to build for .NET Core under Windows 10 and talking to Azure SQL Server, and we've shown how to do an HTTP request via Postman and get a response back. And then in the last video, we did the same thing for Mac OS, talking to Azure and Postman under the Mac, request response there. And what we're going to do now is actually bring up .NET Core on Linux under Ubuntu. We'll have it talking to Azure, response request. In each of these, in the Mac OS and Linux versions, we are not making any code changes and any configuration changes. We are literally just publishing the code and running it on the operating system, which is showing you that it is truly cross-platform. So this is where we're going to be focusing. All right, so let's get right into it. We're going to start with installing .NET Core on Ubuntu. And so we will start by going to this URL. So I'll bring that up. And I'm going to do this under Linux. So I have installed a clean version of Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. I did a software update, but I have not done anything as far as .NET Core or .NET or Visual Studio Code or anything like that. So this is a clean install of the operating system. And we're going to go in here and look up that website. So we'll pause for a minute while Firefox gets loaded here. Okay, so the place we're going here is right here. You can see the URL. And this walks you through how to actually get .NET Core installed on Ubuntu. So I'm going to open a terminal window under Linux, which I have here. And now the first thing we need to do is register the Microsoft signature key and product feed for the distros. And this only has to be done once. So this is a little bit of setup we have to do just the first time. So here we are going to paste that and run it. It's going to go off and pick up some data. Next, we need to do this sudo command. So we'll go ahead and do that. wants our password. Okay, then we register the product feed for the distro, and we're using Ubuntu 16.04, so this is the one we want to use down here. I want to tell you how impressed I've been with how well this works under Linux. My experience with Linux and doing anything like this in the past, especially with things like Mono, has been painful, to say the least. I'm sure that's better than it used to be when I was working with it a few years ago. Okay, so we have done everything there, no errors. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and get .NET Core installed. So this was just registering the product or the distro feed. So let's go ahead and do this. And I'm going to pause this because it's going to do an update. That picked up several packages that it needed. If you look through those, the apt-get update took care of those for us. Okay, next so that was just getting kind of some prerequisites and dependencies set up under Linux. Now we will actually go and download and install .NET Core 2.0 is the version that we're going to do. And it's going to ask you if you want to continue. I'm going to say yes. And again, I'll pause this while it goes ahead and downloads and installs. So just scrolling back through here, you can see it installed the SDK, it's installed the runtime, and now it's going through this command here that I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but it's running a script here, so we'll let it go ahead and finish that off and then resume here. Okay, so it's finished, and the instructions then will have you actually go ahead and do some coding here and get things installed and running. I'm not going to do any of that. What I am going to do, however, is type .NET, which is the command that we use to issue .NET commands now that we have .NET installed. So it looks like it installed okay. And you can go ahead and do these steps on the program, but I'm not going to do them in this video. So we have .NET Core we have the .NET Core SDK ready to go in the runtime, so we're ready to actually move our code over. So let's go back. So we've done this step. Next, we're going to go ahead and install Postman, and there are several commands here that you need to issue to do that. And I'm going to go through each one of those, and let me get on the actual text version of the slide so that I can issue these commands. So there may be an easier way to install Postman, but this was what I found that worked. There's actually this blog entry out there that I've taken these from. So let's go issue these commands. Again, these will be at the command line. So hopefully we can get these. Okay, so it's going ahead and downloading Postman. This is so we can have the desktop application running. Okay, and then we have a sudo here. You may have noticed when you copy things, if it has a carriage return or a line feed at the end, it will just go ahead and execute the command when you're at the command line. So let's paste that in. So it's a good idea not to copy that carriage return line feed, because sometimes it will execute the command before you're ready. So this is simply going to just remove the tar zip that we had. And you'll notice I'm toggling between Windows and Linux here. Again, this is because I'm running everything under Parallels on a Mac, so I've actually got 3 operating systems involved. But I do that because it's just easier to demonstrate. You certainly could do all these separately on different machines. You are technically doing that when you are running on different virtual machines. So, okay, so this is going to set up a symbolic link. And now if I type Postman, it should launch the application. which it did. Okay. So I'm going to need to log into Postman, and so I'll pause while I'm doing that. So Postman is up and running. We don't have anything to run with it yet. You will see that I've got some URLs in here in my history, and we'll be utilizing those in just a minute. Okay, so we have Postman installed now. So let's continue on with our presentation here. All right, now we want to publish for Ubuntu on Windows. So what we need to do is go to the project that we want to publish, which is our core REST server. And in this folder, we are going to, I don't want PowerShell, I want a command line. So let me do this. So you may know this trick. That's going to get us there, and then let's just see what we got. So we need to actually be in the project folder, not the solution folder. And then we're going to issue, now we have .NET on the command line here also. You notice that works. We just have been doing everything through Visual Studio. And then let's go grab this text. So we don't want to issue this command. So this is basically telling it that we want to publish a release version, or you could have a debug version, for this particular target, Ubuntu 16.04-x64. And that's the version of Ubuntu that we're running. So let's do that. Okay, so it'll take it a moment. It's going to look at the project, and then it's going to actually build out in the bin folder a set of files that we can just copy over to Linux and run. Now, when we did this with the Mac, we were able to just copy the solution folder over, open it up in Visual Studio, and compile it and run it that way. If we were targeting the Mac operating system, we'd have to publish this way. So just be aware that you've got this publication step. This is also how we would publish if we were actually getting something out into production, so it's a good exercise to go through. And let me just expand this window just a little bit so I can get the wrap out of there. Okay, so you'll notice it says, okay, so it took care of this publish, and it put it in this folder, bin, release, net core app. And so if I go in here and look in bin and look in release, and in this, so here's the files right here, but this is the folder that we need. We actually need this publish folder. So I'm going to just grab this Ubuntu folder right here. This is the one that we need. So not this one, not Net Core App 2.0, but this Ubuntu. And I'm going to zip this. So I'm just going to say add to archive. And you'll get an idea of about how big this is when we do this. So the total size is 100 meg. So it's going through here and building this up. There's 563 files, so it's got everything that it needs though to run. Okay. So now this folder, what I'm going to do, or this zip file, I'm just going to copy this into my Dropbox folder. And let's go down here to this and just paste it right there. Dropbox will pick that up and sync, and then I can go run Dropbox over in Linux to get it. There's other ways we could move the files around, but that's a quick and easy way. So I'll pause this while Dropbox syncs, and I will log into the web browser over on Linux with Dropbox. So I fired up Dropbox in the Firefox web browser under Linux. You can see the file is here, so I'm going to go ahead and download this file. I'm just going to tell it to save. And open the folder that it's in Linux. And I am going to create another terminal window here. So I'm going to make a directory called core. And we are going to take this file and move it to core. There's our file. And in core, I'm just going to right click on that and do extract here. So that'll unzip all that. And we can delete the zip file. And just look around in here. We've got our file. So everything looks good. All right, so let's go back over to our slides. All right, so now we're ready to actually run it. Oops. So let's see. Let's grab this command. Again, we're using the .NET command. So this is actually going to launch the REST web server. And you may wonder, well, wait a minute, IIS doesn't run under Linux. Remember that in .NET Core, we're using the new Kestrel web server. And so it comes as part of that .NET Core install that we did. Okay. So let's just see what happens if we run that. So that says, hey, I can't find this. And the reason is because we need to be in the publish folder. Oops. Oops, I'm in the wrong folder here. So let's go to Ubuntu. Let's try that again. So you get this error, and this is because you really need to be in the publish folder. Okay? So be there, and then this will launch. Okay, so I want you to look at what it says here. It says host environment's production. Content root path is this. Now listening on localhost 5000. Application started. Press Control-C to shut it down. So to shut it down, I can hit Control-C here. It's the same as hitting stop in Visual Studio. So it is now up and running. So we can go to Postman now. Right here under Linux. Now, remember that we had to add an API key here. But we're going to go to localhost, which is the host running on Linux. Localhost 5000 API address label. So what it should do, it should process the REST request running on the Kestrel web server under Linux, under .NET Core, and it should turn around and call into Azure, the SQL Server, to actually get the data. So we'll go ahead and send that request. So right now it's going from Linux through .NET Core, and there is all of our data from the SQL Server database on Azure. So that's it. It works. Pretty simple. What I noticed when I went out to find research this is there's a lot of articles on doing this, and there's a lot of different ways. There was a lot of different ways to do it, and there wasn't a really good single source of really how to do this. So I hope that this is useful to you. You can apply these same principles in publishing for, again, publishing on Windows or publishing on the Mac. Also, please keep in mind that if this is useful to you, to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and please post any comments or questions that you have. Also, there's a lot of .NET Core 1.0 stuff because it's been out for .NET Core's been out for about a year. There was a lot of stuff out about doing this with .NET Core 1.0. So if you do research, make sure you're looking at the 2.0 version. I hope this has been useful for you, and we will continue on with more .NET Core videos coming up. Please send me any questions or comments for anything that you'd like to see. Thanks.